Okay, let's talk BMesh. So BMesh, as I mentioned in the intro, is the brand new mesh modeling system that has been completely built from the ground up over the last X number of years and is finally ready for release in Blender 2.63. This brings a lot of new things to the table, primarily N-gons and much easier addition of new modeling tools. In 2.63, we have a number of new tools that are pretty awesome that most of us have been waiting for a very long time, and in the past, most of these needs have been met via add-ons throughout, various add-ons that would generally work for a version or two, and then the API would change and they would be broken again. Then a new add-on would be released, or the add-on maybe wouldn't be maintained. And so it was just kind of this constant struggle of, okay, use this add-on for a little while, but then it breaks, so then I use this one. Well, now, luckily, most of these tools that we need are now built directly into Blender. Some of these include bevel is finally back. It's still fairly limited. It does not actually have this recursion option that you can see right here, as it's not available in 2.63 release because it was pulled at the last moment due to it not working very well. But we do have limited bevel support, and there is actually a new bevel add-on that is pretty wonderful that I'll also walk you through that is not covered in these release notes. We now have a full inset tool built directly into Blender that works really well with full thickness and depth support. It supports boundary faces, which if you're not sure what that means, I'll give you a run through. It also supports outsets, which is really great. We've got full dissolve functions now to dissolve into N-gons or just remove either a vertex or an edge directly from a surface without actually dissolving the surface of any way. Same thing with limited dissolve now. Works almost like a simplified tool to allow us to dissolve just based on edge angles and such. We have a brand new, really, really awesome knife tool that allows us to make really advanced knife cuts with full snapping controls and other things. Works really, really awesome. We've got a native bridge tool for finally bridging between two edge loops that works quite well. Fairly simple at this point, but again, one of the nice things about the new BMesh system is that it's a much more flexible system, and so coding new tools is much easier, from my understanding, from what the developers tell me and such, since I am not a developer, but it's a much easier system to work with and a much more versatile one, and so adding new features to a lot of these modeling tools and even adding new modeling tools completely is much more doable in BMesh than it was in the previous versions. We also now have a full vertex slide option, which many of you, if you've been using the vertex slide by Chromoly, was a wonderful add-on over the last year or so. It's now built directly, not the add-on, but vertex slide is built directly into 2.63, and it works really well. There's also general improvements to other things such as shape keys, edge data, edge rotate, now supporting multiple edges, which is great. Rip tool has now been rewritten, and we have a new tool called Vertex Connect, which has been is another addition with BMesh. So let's just take a look at the actual modeling tools in Blender. So first of all, if we just look at this with a default cube, let's just hit tab to go into edit mode. And the first things first is let's try out the N-gons. So if we want to try an N-gon, a really easy way to do it is just use the subdivide tool. So I'm just going to select this top face. And many of you, at least if you are familiar with them, may have felt the same way that I did, in that the subdivide tool was essentially worthless due to it constantly just triangulating everything unless you had a very good reason to do it. Well, not anymore. Now I can simply subdivide wherever I want, and on those perimeters it will simply add the N-gons. So if I hit W, subdivide, you can see that now, rather than these sides being triangles like they normally would have been in some form or another, they're now N-gons, which allow me to then continue working around the geometry in any way that I want without causing lots of triangles here, which would terminate edge loops and just cause all kinds of different problems. I can do all kinds of different things. So like if I undo that subdivide, if I wanted to just say add an edge straight through here, I could simply go into edge mode, select these three edges, hit W and subdivide, and since it automatically detects which mode I'm in, it just subdivide each one of those edges and connected them directly like so, giving me that nice new edge loop right through the center there. And again, that would not have been possible in the previous version because we would have just been left with all kinds of nasty triangles here that would not have worked well. Now, if for whatever reason you do want those triangles, you can simply choose in the operator panel, after subdividing, you can choose the quad/triangle mode, and it will generate all those triangles for you. But in most cases, you're not going to want that. So it's there if you need it, but probably won't need it. So that's, very, very basic N-gon support, but you'll see more N-gons as I go along here. Let's take a look at the basic bevel tool now. So this is obviously a feature that, actually, one more thing on the N-gons. Let's say you wanted to get rid of these two faces. You want to just combine this into one. Well, now, rather than having to use like Alt-J or something like that to convert triangles, you can now just select all the faces you want to make a single N-gon and hit F. It's very, very simple, works really well. Even if you had something like this, and you wanted to combine all this into a single N-gon, just select them, hit F, and it will combine them. So you can even have faces similar to this. So, and this is really great for things like architectural modeling, where you might have these complex forms where you want this just to be a single surface, but maybe this is a door or a piece of trim or whatever it may be that you want to be able to just easily select, extrude, etc., without having to worry about all the complex geometry that the triangles and quads and additional edge loops would cause. All right, let's look at the bevel, since this is something that everyone has been wanting and calling for a very, very long time. So the basic bevel works on any selection mode. If you just hit W and choose bevel, that will do the basic bevel. You can see that we have a percentage option here. So to increase or decrease the amount of bevel, we can choose it to have an even distance such that all the spaces are even on the bevel, or we can also interpret it as Blender units rather than a percentage. Now with the default cube here, that's essentially the same thing, but that's okay. So that works quite well, but let's look at a little more complicated bevel. Let's take, say, just this one edge. Or actually, you know what? We'll do just this one edge for it being a solid edge. Let's do a WN bevel. And you can see that that kind of works, but then we've got some distortion here because I had another vertex here that it's running into. And you would think that the even bevel might change that, but it doesn't, and I don't know if that's simply a limitation of the tool or if else I'm understanding it wrong. But you can see where maybe that's one case that the bevel doesn't work quite as well. So let's take a look at, say, this edge, W, bevel, and there you can see that it worked very, very nicely. The main thing to note on this is that it, again, doesn't triangulate anything. We've got just nice, even N-gons here that we can work with very, very easily. So that's the basic bevel tool. It works. Not fantastic, but again, it's a basic implementation that is going to continuously be improved as we go along. And the next version, 2.64, will most likely see a highly improved bevel tool. All right, so that's the bevel tool. Well, now let's take a look at the inset tool. This is my personal favorite, actually far more than bevel, because inset is something that I use constantly when modeling, and I've really been dying for it. So inset, if you're not familiar with it, basically allows you to take any selection, such as this, and just basically extrude it and scale it in, but with the main difference rather than scaling is that all edge links here will be exactly the same. So this perimeter around here is going to be the exact same width no matter what your scale is. So for simple things like this, I can use the scale tool. But if I wanted to, say, inset this, well, suddenly I can't really scale that without doing some complicated scaling, maybe positioning my 3D cursor in here, scaling towards it, etc., all kinds of different things. Well, now with the inset tool, this is very easy. I can simply go in here. You can find the inset tool. I don't believe it's in the toolbar just yet. No, it's no. But you can find it just by hitting Control F, which will bring up your faces menu, or you can also find it from the W specials menu and inset faces. So just choose inset faces. You can see it's immediately added that extrusion inside around, and we have several different options here. First of all, we have boundary on whether or not it should inset a boundary face, and I'll demo this here in just a moment, so just ignore that for the moment. But we've got offset even, so scale the offset to given more even thickness, just to ensure, if you've got a lot of variation, this can help make sure that it's the same. Scale the offset by surrounding geometry. I'm not actually familiar with what this does specifically. I'm sure with a little testing you can figure it out real quickly. But then we have the thickness option, the most important one here. And the main thing to note is as I scale this thickness up, you'll notice that this perimeter edge through here, and etc., all the way around stays exactly the same. We also now have a depth option, so now I can push those out as well. So this is kind of like the inset and extrude add-on. Generally, this would maybe be done in 2 steps, where maybe first you would do an inset, then you could do the extrude as a second one. So I'll show that in just a second. We do also have the option to do an outset. So I can add in an outset like that rather than on the inside. So this is really good for doing detailing, particularly on like car models and such. If this were, say, the edge of a panel, doing this kind of inset would then give us very nice, or outset would give us very nice clean topology. With this, we also have the select outer option. So just whether or not to select the basically the exterior of the outset or inset works quite well. So now let's combine this. If we were to do, say, 2 of them, we could then take this and we could do an inset again. So do inset faces. We'll set our thickness to 0 and then bring our depth up. And there we go. We now have this very nice extrusion with perfect normals going out in all directions, which, by the way, you couldn't actually do this with the extrude along the normals. If you were to take this and hit E to extrude, right click, and then Alt S, you'll notice that, that's the shrink or scale around the normals, and you then get this distorted surface. And so this is kind of the way that we've been doing it for a long time. That sort of works, but then you have to do all kinds of cleanup work. Well, now with the inset, just using a depth option, we no longer have to do that. So really, really wonderful. So that's the inset tool. Well, now let's look at the dissolve tool. So the dissolve tool is basically a delete function that allows us to remove specific elements without destroying the actual surface. So for example, if I wanted to get rid of these faces, I could actually just hit X, delete the vertices or the faces, but that gets messy. I don't want to do that. If I delete, just the faces, well, I still have those edges there, so that doesn't do me much. I could scale them down to 0, or, scale to 0 and then remove doubles, or any number of things I could do. Or I could simply hit X and choose the dissolve option, and you'll see that it's dissolved all those faces into a single N-gon. Well, that's getting closer to what I want, but if I were to go into edge mode, and note that dissolve is context sensitive. So if I were to go into edge mode and just select these edges, hit X and dissolve, it's just removed them completely. Although just note that by default, the vertices are still there because sometimes you might want this. So when you do the dissolve, note that there is a dissolve verts as well. So doing that will dissolve the vertices. I can then select these ones, dissolve those, and there you go. You can see that it's been completely removed, works very, very well. If I could also say do it, I think I could do it on, well, I could say select these 2, hit X, dissolve. That would fill them into a single face, which has then also, if I do the dissolve verts, it will also remove those vertices. And some of you may be thinking, well, you could just select these and hit F to fill it with an N-gon, but be aware that then this still leaves all these vertices, which I could then go ahead and just hit X and dissolve, but 2 steps to do the single 1-step process by using the dissolve verts option. So it's one of those tools that works really well. It can be used any number of ways. There's multiple ways to do this. So like if I wanted to remove this, I could just do delete the edge loop, but sometimes this may not be a consistent edge loop, in which case the dissolve tool would work really well. Next, we have a limited dissolve option. So the limited dissolve option can be found. Let's just select everything, hit W. Let's see, actually I'm not sure where the limited dissolve is, but if we delete, well, let's just do a search for it. So we'll go down to mesh, and you can find dissolve and limited dissolve. And what limited dissolve does is it removes geometry based on the maximum angle. So you can see that these vertices here got removed because of the angle. So as I boost this up, basically they don't have an angle on them, and so it just deletes them after 1. If I bring this all the way up, as I can start to get past this maximum angle, you can see that pieces are getting removed. So if you had, all kinds of weird geometry, like let's just say something like this, we'll just subdivide this. We'll do a quad mode, or quad and try. And then if I hit select everything, hit W, or nope, go down to mesh, dissolve, limited dissolve, you can see it's just removed all of that extra geometry. So really awesome for cleaning up messy geometry when you have good, clean, defined surfaces. Works really, really well. Okay, Next, let's look at the knife tool. So the knife tool is probably one of the most exciting tools that's been added, and it allows us to basically draw in new cuts anywhere that we want. So for example, if I wanted to make an extrusion out of here, there's a lot of different ways that I could do it, but using the knife tool, it's really easy. So the knife tool can be found right here in the toolbar, knife, and then the select knife is it's a variation on it, and I'll show that in just a moment. But you can also find it with the shortcut of K. So let's just hit K, and you can see I now have a new kind of knife icon. One thing to note is that you have full movement controls in the knife tool, which is really great. That's something we never had before. Allows much easier cuts. You can see instructions down here. Left mouse button to define cut lines, return or spacebar to confirm, escape or right mouse button to cancel. E will start a new cut. Control will give you a midpoint snap, so it just toggles on and off. Shift, ignore snap, again, it's just a toggle. C gives you an angle constrain, which I'll show you in just a moment. And Z cuts through, so rather than only cutting through what you can see, it'll cut through everything. So first of all, just left click. One, as you hover over edges or vertices, you can see it snaps to those. So I can just snap directly to an edge to make sure that I cut into that. So I could just say click there, and then I'll just draw down. I can just kind of control or just click and drag. There we go. And maybe now I'll just hit enter. And voila, I have a new N-gon cut directly into that surface. So I've got an N-gon here, very nice clean geometry. I can just extrude that out, do anything that I want with it. I could go ahead and inset that, and even with this complicated shape, it still works really well. But now let's look at the knife tool a little bit further. So again, bringing up the knife tool, so hitting K, I can just draw over here. If I want to just snap directly to either the midpoint of an edge or vertex, I can just hold down Control, and you can see it'll snap right there. Let me just cancel this cut because that was a pretty nasty one. But let's just hit K, snap to the midpoint, and then maybe I want to snap right to that vertex. So I can just hover over it and it'll kind of snap, but holding Control will basically force it to snap. There we go. So I like that. But now, well, actually, no, I don't like that. I want to cut to the inside one. Snap there, snap there, snap there. And then I decide, hey, I would like to cut from here to here. But if I just draw across there, you'll notice that it cuts through any intersecting lines there. So this is where I would use E to start a new cut. So I hit E, starts a new cut. I can still just rotate around, and let's just click here and click there. And now hit spacebar to return, and there we go. Now, you will notice it got a little bit buggy, so from time to time, it's going to have a couple of problems, but as to be expected with the first iteration of the tool, but that's okay. So let's do that one more time. So we hit K, snap there, we go. E, start a new cut, snap to there, and snap to there, and hit enter. There we are. Works great. Cool. Okay, well, now let's look at the cut through. So if I go into hit K and just draw across here and hit enter, you'll see it's cut all the way through except for not where I can't see anything. So it's only cut through the visible geometry. Well, if I hit K and then hit Z, as you can see right down here, to cut through, to make it on, just cut through here, hit enter, and now it's cut all the way through everything. Now it hasn't connected this because this was a complex N-gon and it couldn't find that connection. So either because it was buggy or else something that I did, no big deal, because that's where a new tool comes in. I mean, you could just do this with the knife tool, just connect those, or you could simply select this vertex, and then hit J. And J gives you the vertex connect tool. You can find it from hit Control V, will give you vertex connect right here, and just works really well to just connect two selected vertices. Say I want to do the same thing here, just hit J, and then maybe I'll add in, say, 2 loop cuts here. Maybe then I want to connect these, hit J, use these, hit J. And so again, you could do that with the knife tool like this, but the J is much quicker for quick selections or something. If you've got a bunch of those to add, you'll want to use the knife tool. If you have just a couple, you might want to use J for vertex select. So either way, both tools work very well. They both basically do the same thing, but of course the knife tool allows you to do full complex geometry cuts, say something like this. And you'll notice that it automatically just snaps to the surface that it's under. And there we go. You could never have done that with any of the previous versions of the knife tool in 2.4.9 or in any 2.5 or 2.6. So that is the knife tool and the vertex connect. Now let's look at a couple more tools, and that is the bridge tool and vertex slide. So bridge is pretty self-explanatory. Let's just say I have this inset here, and then I will duplicate this. And let's say I want to just bridge these two together. Well, I select them, I hit Control F to bring up my faces menu, and just, oh, wait, no, it's under Control E. So Control E for edges. And I have bridge to edge loops, and it will just bridge those together. Now, it's fairly limited at the moment. You'll notice that it does not remove interior faces. It doesn't have a curve option or anything like that to add in subdivisions throughout, but it does work pretty well. Fairly limited, but it works. So that's the basic bridge tool. The one thing that it requires is that each loop, if we have two loops here, each loop must have the same number of vertices. If it does not, such as say this one, if I just dissolve that, select this, Control E and bridge, you'll notice that it fails because select loops must have equal edge count. So it must have the same number of edges in order to bridge correctly. All right, so that is bridge. Now let's look at vertex slide, which is one of my favorite tools. And that is we just select a single vertex, and you probably be familiar with edge slide, where we can select an edge, hit Control E and choose edge slide, slide it up or down. But now we can select a single edge, hit Shift V, or find it from the Control V menu for vertex slide, Shift V right here, and then allows us to choose an adjacent edge that's connected to that vertex that we want to slide it towards, such as, say, this one, and then we can just slide it directly towards that vertex or not. We can slide past. If we hold down Control, we can snap it. So we can snap either to its original location or to the next one, or we can slide wherever we want like that, hit Enter, and we're done. So very basic, very, very cool tool. Works incredibly well for all kinds of different purposes. So that's basically it for the BMesh section. Lots of new modeling tools. Having been using BMesh for several months now, even in production work, I can tell you that it will completely change your production workflow efficiency. Your workflow necessarily will not change, although I would not be surprised if you find yourself adapting to the new tools very quickly and discovering that because of the new tools, the new features, N-gons, the new modeling tools, etc., that you'll find yourself having a much faster workflow than you did in previous versions. So that's the new modeling tools. Thanks for watching, and now let's check out cycles.